This is Sports 225.
Well, this is something I've been meaning to do for a long time. And speaking of long time, it's been way too long since I got to visit with J.R. Ball. He is not only the executive editor of the Business Report, but now the head coach of LSU lacrosse and a guy whose opinion is important for both sports and our community. JR, great to see you. It's been a long time since we actually saw each other in person or even in Zoom.
You're right, Lee. It's been way too long, and I hope you're well.
Yeah. So if I ask somebody what's the fastest growing sport in America today, who knows what they might say, but I would tell you that it's boys lacrosse because I know that. And you got to be pretty excited about that.
Yes, lacrosse is, pickleball may surpass it, who knows? But yes, historically, lacrosse over the last decade has been the fastest growing sport, and really the biggest hindrance to it growing. And I'm not saying this negatively; it's just a fact. But it is Title IX at the college level, so the game's only going to grow so much at the collegiate level. And as we have seen with parents today, if they don't see a huge opportunity where their kids are going to get some level of athletic aid, they're going to steer their kids to sports where they think it will happen, be it soccer, baseball, whatever.
So to give people a little background, you've been here since you came to LSU in what year?
1982, when I transferred from Virginia.
Wow. Now, Virginia, of course, has a nice lacrosse program, but JR is a Baltimore area guy and grew up with lacrosse as part of your, everyday life, right? On the Atlantic seaboard, it's a huge sport.
Yeah, for us, that was the equivalent of what football is in Louisiana is what lacrosse was in the niche area of Maryland where I grew up. And so I played it all through youth and in high school. Had a very brief cup of coffee at UVA before really injuries took what minimal talent I had and erased that. And from there, I allegedly came to LSU. My girlfriend at the time was here, but I allegedly came here to rehab because I figured it was warm year round. Who would not like that? Unfortunately, I stumbled across Mardi Gras and what used to be South Sea Island on the LSU campus. And that pretty much ended the comeback trail, that and fried food.
Now, over the years, among other things, Jay's been the editor of Tiger Rag. Like I said, he's been with Business Report a long time. We'll get into his resume later. But lacrosse is always something that stayed close to your heart. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when your own son started playing at Catholic High, that's when you got involved on a coaching end, or was it even before then?
It was actually before that. The guy who was coaching Catholic at one point is a gentleman by the name of Jeff Eccles. And he got word that I had a lacrosse background. So he put two guys. Anyway, to cut to the chase, we started a youth program that was really meant to be a feeder into Catholic High. One of the challenges at Catholic was they would get a lot of kids who had never played before. By the time you taught them really how to be proficient at the game, they were graduating. So Catholic was not having the level of success that it wanted to have. So we started the Baton Rouge Mustangs about, 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, I'm sorry. And it was meant to be a feeder program. And so, we got pretty competitive at the youth level. And then we started a summer league travel program that sort of combined Baton Rouge and Lafayette. We went around the country doing our thing. But yeah, when my son went to Catholic, the coach at that time, Tyler Gray, asked me to come on board and be the offensive coordinator. So I had been there, ever since. I think I was there 6-7 years before I left.
Well, there at the time there was quite a few high schools playing club lacrosse, so it's not like a varsity sport under the LHSAA, but on the club level, and now that's grown exponentially. Isn't that true?
Yes. Now it is like at Catholic High, it is a varsity sport within the athletic program. The reason why lacrosse has remained outside of the High School Athletic Association, some of it, quite frankly, is politics and who gets to control the money. And some of it is because lacrosse is still growing. There are some clubs that may draw from multiple schools, which can be problematic when you're applying for high school, for the LHSLL. So there is a movement within a segment of the high school lacrosse community to get recognized that way. Frankly, I don't know that it is the smartest idea. I don't think there's enough growth in the game in Louisiana yet to justify that. And I don't know that they need to get a hold of lacrosse generated money at this point.
Yeah. How many high schools are fielding club teams in some form or fashion right now? Do you know?
At Division I in Louisiana, there are 14 high school programs, and then when you get into Division II, which are sort of upstart programs, or just people who aren't competitive because of whatever the resources are, there's another 14 or 15. So at one point there were 35 schools playing. Right now it's down to somewhere in the 28 to 30 range.
That's still amazing, though, to have that kind of competition for a sport that's, foreign to this state that, has its grassroots, and, it'll keep growing.
Yeah, and really the thing that hurts here, I mean, this gets into a larger question about Louisiana and whatnot is, so because Louisiana doesn't import a lot of people, so it's not drawing in people who are from lacrosse hotbed areas. So if you look at, for example, Dallas, which has grown tremendously and is producing Division I NCAA talent on a regular basis, well, one of the things that helps that is there's a lot of people that have lived in hotbed areas, whether it be Maryland, New York, wherever, and they're being transferred, they're opting to move to Dallas. There's not as much of that happening in Louisiana. So what happens is you don't have as many kids familiar with the game, and two, the amount of coaches you need to really help grow the game is tiny.
He is J.R. Ball. He's the executive editor of Baton Rouge Business Report. He's also the head lacrosse coach at LSU, and a guy who has, luckily for me, lots of opinions about a lot of things. And I'm going to tap on those as we continue. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Back on Sports 225, hanging out with J.R. Ball, the executive editor of the Baton Rouge Business Report, who, luckily for me, can opine on a number of subjects. But we talked about the lacrosse in the first segment. Just to finish up with that, so at LSU, you took over the club program there, and you guys are doing really well. If you follow JR on Facebook, I don't know, I assume you probably have a Facebook lacrosse page as well, but I love seeing the pictures and the reports, and, you guys are doing good, huh?
Yeah, so far we're 6-0 on the year, and depending on which poll you believe, we're ranked either 14th, 16th, or 18th in the country right now. And I do want to say real quick, yes, we are in what's called the MCLA, the Men's Collegiate Lacrosse Association, which is club. But most of our players, I mean, we have kids who have played D1 lacrosse. We have a young man on our team who was a 4-year starter at Syracuse, who was it's a powerhouse program. We have other kids that were D1. Generally, kids are choosing to play at the MCLA level because they want a more balanced life than what you get involved with when you're playing at an NCAA level, whether it's 1 or 2, and sometimes even 3, depending on the program, where, it is a real grind to be a student athlete. And it's one thing to be in that grind when it's football, basketball, or baseball, where you theoretically you're still harboring the dream of a gajillion-dollar contract on the back end, but that's not the case for sports like lacrosse, water polo, or whatever. So you're doing it for love of the game, and so a lot of times when it's a love of the game thing, you also want to have a love of social life. Allegedly, we'd like to hope they're going to class and have some love for academics, but they just want a more balanced life. But don't be fooled to think that it's just a bunch of ragtags playing beer league lacrosse out there. I mean, it is a pretty competitive league, and regularly our club teams will go up and beat Division II and Division III programs.
No, that's really cool, and it's fun. How often do you guys practice, and where? And do you play at home at all this year?
Yeah, we practice 3 times a week. and we practice on the University Rec Field. It's that field right there by River Road. We're sort of, if the levee ever goes, we're wiped out. But we're right there, sort of wedged between Alec Box and the river, right on the bend of the river, which is all the more exciting. But anyway, we play there, and that's also where our home games are. We may next year, we're talking to some people who are building a turf complex right off campus. And we're looking at potentially utilizing that just because the weather in South Louisiana is so fabulous during the rainy months that it can impact what we're doing. But anyway, that's what we do. Yeah, we just were home this weekend. We played Tulane on Friday and beat them. And then Saturday, we knocked off the defending Lone Star Alliance, which is our conference champion, TCU.
When are you home next?
We only have one more home game. It's in 3 weeks. We host a couple of teams, non-conference. So we're basically on the road for much of the rest of the season. We go to Ole Miss this weekend. The following weekend, we're at Alabama. Then we have a home game, and I can't even remember who we're playing. I just remember, and then after that, we're going to Dallas. We have SMU and the University of Texas, which are the two other teams in our conference that we've got to worry about for the league title.
No, that's good though. And there's some people watching this who I think would be intrigued and want to come see. So we'll figure out a way, tell me later where we link up to where they can.
Yeah, I'll do that. Just know that we beat Texas A&M. So, and I didn't get an extra $1 million in my paycheck this year. We just beat them straight up. So, so if Brian Kelly wants to kick some of that extra $1 million that he just got deposited into his bank account my way, even if it's $1.50, I'm happily going to take it.
You'll take it. What's a lacrosse ball cost retail?
Lacrosse ball, $2.95.
Man, that's at least go for $3. Do you still follow sports the way you used to?
Not exactly the way I used to. I mean, one of the things I realized when I got out of it on a day-to-day basis, well, two things. One, you can enjoy sports a lot better, sort of like a restaurant. You enjoy the meal a lot better if you don't know how it's made. And so the one thing I've tried to get away from is sort of how is the sausage of college athletics made. So when I sort of got away from that, I've enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, I still will watch sports, not so much basketball. I don't know why I've soured on basketball, but football, women's basketball I'm okay with, but football I'm still locked in on.
How about basketball? Because three guys are always standing outside the circle when they're on offense with their hands like this, just waiting and not running and cutting or picking or doing anything. How's that for starters?
Well, that's one thing. And look, this is going to be sort of the old man segment of the show. Like I grew up with basketball. I grew up with basketball being a much different game. So this notion where you just sort of run a pick and roll, kick the ball to the wing for the three. Well, I get the efficiency of all that. So I understand the analytics and the math of that. I'm sort of more enamored with the thing where you're sort of running back cuts and there's sort of weave action going on and, different things like that where there's a little bit of poetry to what's going on in offense. Right now, it's get the ball, jack it, hustle down, maybe play defense. But all you do if you play defense is zapping energy. So you can't shoot from 32 feet. You can only shoot from 28 feet. So, but I acknowledge the athleticism and the skill sets of these guys. I just don't find it as aesthetically pleasing. And again, it's the old man syndrome. When I was carrying a potato uphill 5 miles every day, kind of a thing.
You know what? You're preaching to the choir for another old man. It's college basketball. I want the old Princeton back cut offense to come back in vogue. Well, that's like this particular LSU basketball team, which obviously can't put the ball in the ocean from the edge of the pier, runs a really good offense and tries really hard. So for me, they're more fun to watch. And I watch the higher levels and I'm like, it's just brutal. Anyway, look, let's take a break. When we get back, we got some sports and some city stuff to talk about. He's J.R. Ball. He's the executive editor of the Business Report. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. Brack, your #1 park system in the nation.
Back on Sports 225. And if you missed the first couple of segments, well, you missed a lot that you could have learned about lacrosse and lacrosse at LSU, because J.R. Ball is the head coach. And he's also the executive editor of the Business Report, a place that he's been at. You were there, left, and went back, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was there for, I think, 15 years, left for 4, and have been back for almost 5, coming up in July.
Let's talk about your sports media background, though, because when you got out of LSU, was Tiger Rag the first stop?
Yeah, other than some stringer stuff for like the Baltimore Sun or Sports Illustrated, but the first full-time gig was Tiger Rag. Yeah.
Yeah. What years were that, and what was the era? You know, what was going on at that time?
I caught the last 2 years of Bill Arnsbarger. And then I had all of Mike Archer. I had the joy of all of Curly Hallman. And then I had the first 2 years of bringing the Magic back with Jerry DiNardo. So basically, my epic time was the low point of the last, of LSU football. As soon as I left, LSU said, "Hey, let's go get Nick Saban and see what happens." So I missed out on the joy. I was just there for the pain. But I will always remember, because of it being there, I was always looking for positives. And I will just say this: Tiger fans can rejoice, because LSU is the only NCAA Division I program to go through 8 consecutive non-winning seasons and then go on to win multiple national titles after that. So quite a resurrection.
Yeah, because if you recall, I was the LSU basketball beat writer during most of that time, and it was just the opposite. The LSU basketball team generally was doing pretty well. And we used to make the joke that, as the basketball season would start for the hardcore LSU fan, the football season was a wash. And so they'd immediately become more interested in basketball, as the LSU fans are wont to do. Now it's like, oh, the basketball team's really bad, so we're going to get excited about baseball. It's got nothing to do with which sport is which.
Well, particularly when you had a personality like Dale Brown coaching at that time. Not only were they fairly, a pretty good team. I mean, they would vary somewhere from pretty good to really, really good. But, Dale was always an entertaining and interesting character. So you always knew, from a journalist standpoint, you were always going to have stories to write, or he was going to make some crazy statement that you could have fun with. And then at that point, Skip Burtman was sort of really getting things rolling. So, yeah, 2/3 of your year were pretty good. And even back then, the volleyball team was going to Final Fours. I mean, who knew? I went to UCLA to watch Scott Luster take the women's volleyball team to the Final Four. So, I mean, things were rocking and rolling pretty good outside of football at that point.
Yeah, I had forgotten that you had actually covered that volleyball Final Four. Wow, that's something. So, like me, you loved covering Dale Brown, and you knew and loved Sue Gunner. Thoughts about the recent court debacle?
Yeah, well, first off, it breaks my heart that Sue is being dragged through and being tarnished as a result of this fight, because Sue doesn't deserve that. I think, it ought to be Dale Brown court. What Dale Brown achieved at LSU is remarkable. And I am, like, even on a larger picture, I don't know why. Like, I've never seen a coach who is as prominent to his institution as Dale Brown is to LSU, who gets so snubbed by LSU. And it's not just over this naming thing. I'm telling you, if Dale Brown had been at any other school, they'd be regularly honoring him left and right. So part of it is somebody's got an axe to grind with Dale Brown. And look, I get Dale can be polarizing, but you can't argue with, he put LSU basketball on the map. I get Pete Maravich, but then there was the drop. But it's a consistent program. Who else has taken LSU to 2 Final Fours? Let's just leave it at that. We can stop there. But elevated the game and made people care about basketball. I mean, his crusade to take down Kentucky was unbelievable, and it just got fans jacked up. So Dale deserved it. I'm fine with Stu deserves tributes. Now, to me, Stu's greater contributions were to the women's game at large, not so much of what she did at LSU, though I will readily concede Stu helped elevate the game at LSU. And then Pokey Chapman took it to the highest levels. And I get they will never honor Pokey Chapman at this institution. But, I think there are plenty of ways that Sue Gunner can be honored for her incredible accomplishments to the game of basketball without having to step on Dale Brown's legacy. And that's sort of my ultimate position. Make it Dale Brown Court. There's plenty of things you can name after Sue Gunner if you want.
Yeah, and like the other day, I watched the LSU women play Mississippi State, and prominently on TV it said Dale Brown Court, and it didn't hurt their chances at all. Anyway, go ahead. No, both of us are like,
well, no, I'm fine. Because what are we going to do when Kim Mulkey wins multiple titles here? I mean, we're going to call it the Dale Brown, Sue Gunner, Kim Mulkey court. I mean, at what point, how many names can we get on that court at some point?
Break it up into quadrants.
Well, maybe so. Each quarter, you could say you got the Kim Mulkey free throw lane. You got this. I mean, who knows what they could do? Although most of that would probably go to corporate sponsors, but we'll see.
Think NASCAR. He's JR Ball. We got him.
If you're not first, you're last.
We got a couple minutes left on Sports 225, and we'll be right back.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
All right, we're back on Sports 225. We just got a couple minutes left. JR Ball is my guest. Go to sports225.com for all the show listings when you're watching it here on Your View, which is Cox 4. JR not only writes daily and does a lot of yeoman's work at the Business Report, but he opines about our city. And JR, can Baton Rouge be saved? We're both people who came here because we wanted to come. We stayed, and right now it just seems very pessimistic.
It is. I think there's two things. One, at some point, this community needs to wake up and realize the incredible potential that it has to be a really vibrant and economically important mid-level, mid-sized city. We don't have a whole lot of pride in ourselves. You can tell just by looking at the litter. If you have pride in your home, it's not trashed up. You clean it up, you mow the grass, you do all the little things to have an aesthetically good-looking house. We don't do that in Baton Rouge. So that's step one. Step two, there's a remarkable lack of leadership throughout this community. Baton Rouge has a fascinating habit of putting number twos in number one positions. And so that would sort of be the other deal. And so when we ultimately start demanding that Baton Rouge be run and that we set our aspirations the same way we hold the LSU football program, and this is not about spending money like football is. I'm not saying you got to spend $370,000 to get Arch Manning on a recruiting weekend like Texas does. I'm simply saying that we would not accept mediocrity out of our LSU football program. Hell, we've run coaches who've won national titles out of here because the belief was they were taking the program into mediocrity. Have we ever gotten rid of anybody at the city, parish level because we're saying, you know what, they're keeping us in mediocrity? We just don't care enough.
I can't think of a better note to end on than that. This has been fun and fascinating. He's JR Ball, the executive editor of the Baton Rouge Business Report and the head coach of the LSU lacrosse team. And if you missed any part of the show, you really need to go back and watch because luckily for you, it gets replayed a bunch. JR, great to catch up. And really appreciate all of that you brought to this show.
Lee, always a pleasure, and it's great to see you again.
And thank you to everyone for watching Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching